What's good, y'all? It's Brian doing video number 2. Here's what this is. I was inspired to do this because going through my normal scroll of my normal channels, I don't necessarily want to call out anybody or pick on anybody, but it was on a Think Media, one of the Think Media podcasts. And Sean mentioned something that just kind of struck me. He was talking about, it was kind of a productivity kind of speech. He's been interviewed and he talks about people having a weak mindset and being weak minded. I'm paraphrasing, I'm really paraphrasing. But it was more or less saying that, something goes wrong or you get rejected or something happens early in the day and it just upsets your entire day. And he attributed it to having a weak mindset. And it just, as an ADHD person, it really just, that phrasing hit me in the absolute wrong place. And it's not a him issue. It's not just him, because I love Think Media stuff, but it's something I'm seeing in the guru space on YouTube, especially when we talk about mindset. There's a lot of people chastising people for what they perceive as mental weakness. And for people with ADHD, if you don't have some kind of something to filter out the noise, these videos are not helpful. They make you feel terrible because, and I'm gonna tell you why. One of the things that comes with ADHD is, specifically the way I have it, is being super, super sensitive to criticism or rejection, where I'm fully aware of how disproportionately I can react when criticized or if I feel like something's rejecting. I felt like I've gone into it with where I felt like a family member I grew up with was rejecting me, and it was over some specious BS. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing, but I could not shake it to the point where it's almost debilitating. And I've understood that's just part of how my brain works. And I think a lot of stuff that I see in this productivity space is not geared for people that have neurodivergent brains. It's not helpful. And I hope this lands with some of the people that do this kind of stuff, where you add some layer of context and caveat to some of the things that you say on your outlets. A lot of people I know that have ADHD are super accountable. Matter of fact, they're over accountable for their actions to the point where they blame themselves for things that they have no control over, and almost guilt tripping them for their emotions related to something that is already set up to be a disproportionate response, like rejection for an ADHD person, really doesn't help. It makes you feel worse. So I'm off my outline. I'm about to get on my outline. People throw around mental weakness. If you've got ADHD, the word doesn't really fit your reality. You're not weak. Your brain is wired differently. It's playing on its own difficulty level. Okay. The productivity world is built for neurotypical brains. And I do think that's probably why so many people struggle with some of these productivity hacks that people throw out there, because it is a spectrum. And if you have some of these traits, the ADHD trait, I've been diagnosed. And so I know a lot of people that have not, that appear to me to have some of the traits of ADHD or whatnot. And I don't have any clinical backing to diagnose or anything along those lines, nor would I ever. But I do think that's why a lot of people struggle with some of this productivity hack stuff out there, because it's made for a brain that's optimized to function in ways that we think brains should function. And so their frameworks assume emotional regulation, and ADHD brains may not have that on tap. I'm fully aware of a lot of the games that my mind plays on me or is playing on me as an ADHD person. Doesn't make the impact any less. Okay. Like the sensitivity to rejection, the way it was framed almost made it feel like it was a moral judgment. Like, you're just sensitive to that. You're just sensitive to criticism and you let it upset your whole day. I try not to. I'm really aware. I can even do the self-talk and say, hey, man, you're overreacting to this, but it still doesn't make it any better. And framing it as a moral failing or a lack of maturity or whatever doesn't make it much better. Okay. It's this preaching toughen up. Okay. And I'm pretty good at regulating my emotions. I used to have to do case management. I used to have to walk into crisis situations and absolutely present as the calmest person in the room when everybody's chaotic while I am terrified. Somebody has a weapon, somebody's hurting themselves, something where it's a very scary situation, and I had to regulate my emotions. I'm fully aware of and able to do that, but I still do experience the sensations that come with it. You just need to get tougher, and I see it a lot with some of the bigger names and faces on YouTube in the space that I follow. And so it makes it even harder. You just got to grind through and just get through these tasks. You just got to put your head down. You just need to enforce some discipline on yourself. Great. How? I've been trying to unpack that for 40 years, over 46 years. So this is what ADHDers actually deal with. I have a negative inner voice that will not shut up. It's already critical of everything I do. Even right now, my inner voice is complaining about this light up here. All right. It's complaining about where the cameras were positioned. It's complaining about this boom arm for the mic. It's constantly, it never shuts up. And I've learned different tricks. I personify it. I say Mr. Negative, so it doesn't sound like the negative voices in my own voice. So I don't internalize what it's saying, but it's still present. I'm constantly battling that. It's a really real thing. And it's been around for pretty much as long as I can remember. Before I went through all the hormones and everything that come with growing older as a child, that negative inner voice had me in some really dark places where I couldn't emotionally regulate. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. But I've dealt with this for a long, long time. And emotional intensity feels like a wave, even when I'm fully aware of what is happening. I still feel that. And criticism feels like a punch in the gut. The smallest thing feels like the biggest insult, the biggest failing. I even had it in school. I would get like an A on a paper or A minus on a paper, and it would be one thing that was wrong. And I would laser focus in on that one thing that didn't go right and beat myself up for it. That's just how my brain is. And so criticism lands harder and louder and longer than it does for other people. And it's something I'm fully aware of. Sensitivity to this stuff isn't weakness. It's just mismanaged power. I'm a scanner. Like, I notice tone shifts. I notice somebody's facial expression shifting. And instantly my mind starts reading into those cues. Am I boring this person? Do they really like me? Are they just tolerating my existence? Why did their tone shift like that? Micro signals. And the same weakness that they judge is the same trait that makes me intuitive, aware, and creative. It allowed me to read when I was working with parents and families and stuff, and even talking to judges and lawyers, being able to pick up on subtle changes in voice, facial cues to adjust what I'm saying to get the best outcome for the people I'm serving. That level of sensitivity helped me out in a lot of ways. But to label it as weakness, that's kind of an ugly thing. And I know I'm paraphrasing. And like I said, I'm harping on it partly because of my ADHD. But the other part of it is I feel like as I'm searching for answers on YouTube and searching out people I do look up to and people that I do want to model some of my business outcome success after, it's very disheartening for them to just attribute, well, this is just because you're undisciplined. This is because you're weak-minded. That kind of stuff doesn't help people. It really doesn't. Because when you're on a stage like that, you understand that your audience is bigger than you know. And you're going to have a wide swath of people. And neurodivergent people fall into that wide swath of people. And when you're giving messages like that and you're not Like you're just saying, well, that's just weak-minded. You just told some of your audience that something they have no control over is a weakness within them. It's not cool, man. A brain that's built for pattern recognition and survival and masking, like being able to pretend to be normal in situations where I feel abnormal, it's labeled as being fragile. That's not cool. So what's actually going on? You've been operating with judgment layered over your wiring. You've been told to run neurotypical software on a non-neurotypical hardware. Y'all, you've been shamed for things that you didn't choose. And that's not fair. It really isn't. I'm here to tell you that, yes, some of this productivity fights you find in this space is amazing and transformative. If you aren't neurotypical, I advise you to take it with a grain of salt and adjust it for how your brain works. Leave out the judgments. Leave out somebody saying you're weak or undisciplined or unfocused. Take what you can, leave the rest. Do not put judgments on yourself because you're not able to take this productivity information that's made for somebody that's not neurodivergent and apply it to your life. I'm asking you, I'm begging you. There's nothing weak about fighting your brain every morning just to get started. There's no weakness in combating a negative inner voice that's told you that everything from you are an absolute failure to your family doesn't really like you to you should just not exist anymore, and surviving that. There's no weakness in that. There's nothing weak about that. There's nothing weak about being sensitive when emotional regulation is a constant battle for you. There's no weakness in that. There's nothing weak about trying again when your mind won't shut up and is the loudest critic in the room, and where every success is tempered by what you could have done better and your mind screaming at you how much you fucked up, even when you've had success. There's no weakness in that. Take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. A lot of this productivity stuff that you see on this space, on YouTube or TikTok or wherever you're seeing this, on Instagram or whatever, understand that a lot of it is made for neurotypical hardware, not a neurodivergent brain. Okay? It's not a lack of toughness. It's neurology. It's how your brain works. Okay? And it's the emotional and mental tax that ADHD charges to you. All right? Let's talk about some things that may actually help. So a hack I have for my negative inner voice is when it starts up, when it really starts cranking up and it starts telling me I can't do something, I immediately go out and try the thing that my negative inner voice told me I couldn't do. I'm like, prove it. And I've said this before on this channel. Watch me. My negative inner voice is saying I'm a failure in this aspect and I can't do X, Y, and Z. Watch me do it. All right. I've also given my negative inner voice, I personified it as a name outside of me. It's Mr. Negative. Okay. I've given it a name. I've given it its own name so that it doesn't sound like the criticism is coming from me. It's coming from somebody else and I can ignore that criticism. Okay. Externalize everything, man. I had a worker that had ADHD. They weren't medicated like I was at the time. But what I had her do was I said, stop trying to carry all these tasks and all this crap around in your head. Find a place where you can brain dump and dump it in there, and something that you can go back and look over, but get it out of your head. My office, like my Post-it note habit in the office was nasty work, but it worked for me because I could get stuff out of my brain and I could focus on tasks that I was working on as opposed to carrying around all these other tasks that I needed to do. I just dumped them somewhere where I could go back and refer to them. I didn't store it in my head. Okay. I have a couple of modes. I have wide scan and deep drill. Okay. I pick one and I try not to mix. Wide scan is kind of looking at things and making my links and stuff like that, really looking at things from the broadest point of view. And then the deep drill is hyper focus time. It's hyper focus, baby. It's time to lock in on this thing, on this obsession right now. All right. I try not to shift between the two. Sometimes I do, and I forgive myself for doing it. Reduce the friction that shame causes. So neutralize the story you tell yourself before you take on a task. All right. If you're feeling bad about, dang, this thing, I'm late on this thing and blah, 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 try to find a way to make that judgment as neutral as possible before you start on it. Okay. We talked about reframing the inner critic. I give it a different name so that I externalize it. Here's the thing, y'all. You're not weak. You're wired differently. You're wired differently. And once you stop forcing yourself into somebody else's definition of discipline or strength, it gets a little bit easier. It gets lighter. The burden doesn't weigh as much. Okay. So the only thing I'm going to ask, if you like this ADHD flavored content, leave me a like to let me know I can go back to this. I was playing around with doing this stuff this summer, in addition to all the other things that I was working on. I do feel like specifically for ADHD brains, I know there's a lot of content. I don't think there's a lot of stuff for Black folks with ADHD, specifically with Black males with ADHD, but I digress. I don't think there's a lot of stuff for entrepreneurs with ADHD. And so if you like this content, subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, or leave me a comment and say, hey, Brian, I like this stuff. Keep going, keep posting this kind of stuff, and I will keep generating it for you. All right. Be peaceful with yourself and understand that a lot of the productivity stuff that these people on YouTube are spinning isn't really for you. You take it with a grain of salt, make it work for your own brain, but do not carry their judgments with you. Do not carry where they're saying you're being undisciplined or weak or whatever. Don't carry those judgments. Your brain works differently. All right, y'all? I'm not trying to cause consternation. I'm not trying to start beef with anybody, but that framing, the way he said that, it just really hit me in a bad spot, because the rejection sensitive, dysmorphia or whatever, it really makes it hard sometimes even function as a business owner, because you're working so hard to avoid the no that you bypass so many different yeses. If you want more, just let me know. I will holler at y'all later. Thanks for tuning in. Peace. And be peaceful with yourself. Be nice to yourself. Be easy, y'all.